Blessings. Welcome to today's Law Enforcement Daily Devotional. Today we're in Jeremiah, and we were reading Jeremiah chapter 30, 31, and 33. And a lot of really good law enforcement takeaways for me today, and I'm going to share some with you. Some that, we'll just get into it. Jeremiah 33, 31, 15. Was really interesting because as you read, and I hope you got a chance to read all this, you come to the point where you read this verse. And so up to that point, God had been saying some pretty good things about returning Israel back to their country because they're still in captivity. But then all of a sudden he used this verse of a voice is heard in Ramah, lamentations and bitter weeping. Rachel is weeping for her children. She refuses to be comforted for her children because they are no more. And if you have heard this before, this comes also out of Matthew chapter 2, verses 16 through 18, when King Herod is trying to find Jesus because the Magi said, he'll be born in Bethlehem. So he goes to that area and he tries to kill all of the children 2 years and younger. And this verse is used of the Israelites crying and weeping for the children who were murdered by King Herod. But it's also used here, and it's a good illustration that shows us that sometimes a Bible verse will have a meaning in this context in the Old Testament, and then it has another meaning in that context in the New Testament. So it's always good to keep your eyes open for things like this that pop up. And then we jump into chapter 31, verse 21, and this is just a really good life takeaway, not necessarily the law enforcement takeaway, but a good life takeaway for you and me as individuals, not just for our jobs, but for our personal lives when we deal with our family and our friends. Just something for us and everybody, not just us, but this is not just related to law enforcement. It says, set up for yourselves road marks. Place for yourselves guideposts. Now, road marks and guideposts direct us to where we need to go. If you're on a road trip and you've never been to, let's say, Florida, you will come, as you're going down your road, you will come to road markers that say, Jacksonville, 400 miles, or Orlando, 75 miles. You're on the right path if those are the cities you're going to. So they keep you on the right path. They direct you to where they're going, just like what he's saying here. Listen to the rest of this. He talks about set up for yourself road marks, place for yourself guidepost, direct your mind to the highway. Not just physically going to a place, but direct your mind to the highway. God set a path for us to be on, the path of righteousness and the path of justice. And we are on those paths when we're living in our spirit, not when we're living in our flesh, but when we're fighting that battle every day, spirit versus flesh. And we are in the spirit and we are traveling down the path that God has chosen for us. Set up road markers to remind yourself. There are good road markers all over the place. I bet you've got a road marker like this sitting somewhere in your house, or hopefully in your breakout bag at work. Just anything that will remind you of God, a daily Bible read, things that keep us on that path, fellowship with the church, believers. To me, as a cop, one of the greatest road markers were other members of FCPO, other Christian police officers, where we were keeping each other accountable, and when we saw each other on calls, it was a good reminder to remain on that path of righteousness and justice and do the right thing. So anyway, I love that verse. It's just a good life verse for us. And then I'm gonna mention something real quick that you will not find. I say that you probably will not find anywhere else. I'm 99.9% sure, which means I'm probably not on the right track if I'm the only one going down this road. But on my reads, I've talked about this before, the comparison of the Levites to law enforcement. Just with all the reads, all the confirmation of the jobs that they do and the way God has set their path, the things he expects from them, just line up so closely to law enforcement. I can't help but think that there is something to this parallel. So when I saw these verses about the Levites, obviously I'm gonna mention them. But Jeremiah chapter 33, verses 17 through 22. Listen to this. It's really interesting. It's long, but listen. For thus says the Lord, David shall never lack a man to sit on the throne of the house of Israel. And we know that Jesus came from the line of David. So that is absolutely fulfilled. Christ will always be on the line of David, and he will always sit on the throne. So that can never be broken. But listen to this next part. And the Levitical priest shall never lack a man before me to offer burnt offerings, to burn grain offerings, and to prepare sacrifices continually. These are men who do the work. That's what the sacrificing things are. Do the work that God has called them to. God is the God of justice and righteousness. He's told us this over and over again, and I can't help but think that our sacrifice and our work and the path that he's given us lines up with the Levitical priest. The word of the Lord came to Jeremiah saying, Thus says the Lord, if you can break my covenant for the day and my covenant for the night, so that the day will not be at their appointed time, then my covenant may also be broken with David, my servant, so that he will not have a son to reign on his throne. Again, we know that's not going to happen. And he says, if that happens, then and with the Levitical priest, my ministers, as the host of heaven cannot be counted, and the sand of the sea cannot be measured, so I will multiply the descendants of David, my servant, and the Levites who minister to me. Again, I think law enforcement can be substituted for the Levites in New Testament era. Again, there's nowhere where the Bible says that or lines it out. I just read between the lines, and that's just what I feel in my heart. Anyway, good read today. Tomorrow we're back in Ezekiel, and we're going to read chapters 25, chapter 29, verses 1 through 16, chapter 30, and chapter 31. So read ahead, and I'll see you tomorrow. Be safe.